In a previous video, we ranked every version of Link from Legend of Zelda. Now, it seems only fitting that we take a look at the character that the series is actually named after. So today, we're going to rank every version of Princess Zelda. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Ryan here from Game Essays. This channel is all about covering some of my personal favorite game series, including The Legend of Zelda and Pokemon. And we sprinkle in some other games from here and there as well, so if you like this kind of content, please make sure to like and subscribe. Anyway, today we are taking a look at every version of Princess Zelda throughout the Zelda games. Similar to what we did with Link, if it's the same Zelda from game to game, we are going to look at that as a singular character, and we'll use that throughout. And some of the criteria that we're ranking by is not necessarily the design of Zelda, but more about her character and what she does in the story. So how interesting she is, how likable she is as a character. Similar to what we did with Link, we didn't really focus on, does this Link design look better than the other? So yeah, that's kind of out the window, and maybe, everyone has their kind of favorites design-wise, but we know the different art styles and all that, but it's more about the character, so just a heads up there. So for anyone that's wondering why we're not really talking about that, it's just not part of the consideration. Anyway, I do have a little trusty guide here in case I forget some of the details for what the characters do in each game. Just kind of a refresh, so I might be referencing that. If you see me looking over this way, it means I'm referencing that document. Anyway, let's jump into it, enough wasting time. Let's go with a Zelda that I'm familiar with, and that is the Ocarina of Time Zelda. So I would probably give her an A. Ocarina of Time Zelda, as a child, is obviously she's up to speed on what's going on with Ganondorf. She's suspicious of him. She does say something, make some mistakes in the fact that, having Link gather everything basically just opens up the door of time for Ganondorf to get the upper hand. So that's a huge mistake there, but I gotta give Zelda credit because, spoiler, she is Sheik throughout your adult timeline experience, playing as adult Link. She is helping you along the way and doing everything she can to participate. And then obviously she does get kidnapped, but at the very end of the game. She manages to avoid getting kidnapped through most of the game. She gets captured by Ganondorf at the very end, and then you have to save her, but she does also participate in sealing away Ganon. So is she the best version of Zelda? No, we don't really get too much into her character, but she does a lot throughout the story, and she's actually participating a lot in the events that are happening. So I think she deserves an A for that reason. Let's go to just original Legend of Zelda from the NES, not the first ever Zelda canonically, historically, but the first Zelda we ever meet. And I would say that she's probably a C. The early games, there's not too much story going on, so that kind of goes against her. But she does some stuff. She is able to split up the Triforce of Wisdom to prevent Ganon from getting it, but that's pretty much all she's able to do. But the fact that and she also has Impa look for a hero to, go on this quest to collect the pieces, stop Ganon, and rescue her. So she has some participation in the events that are going on, but it's a little bit more minimal, and, it's the NES days. You're not going to get these crazy characters, these in-depth characters. So the limitations there kind of put her as a lower, less interesting version of Zelda. Let's look at Zelda 2. Zelda 2, I would probably say, she's asleep the whole game, so I guess, I also want to give her a C just because in the backstory to The Legend of Zelda and Zelda 2, she's actually trying to actually prevent some things from happening. Let me reference my little handy dandy document here just so I'm not speaking out of turn here. Let's see. So the princess she's trying to stop her brother and the magician basically from getting the Triforce of Courage. I think she knows about it due to the king before he passes away. I don't want to sit here and reading the whole thing, but anyway, she's trying to stop her brother and this magician dude from getting the Triforce of Courage. So she is pulling some act, but again, she's asleep like the whole game, so not really doing too much and not that interesting of a character. Yeah, maybe she's a D. I gotta put her down a D for that. Let's see here. Let us go with Spirit Tracks Zelda. I think has to be S tier. Spirit Tracks Zelda, if you saw my companion tier list, I also ranked her very high there. Basically, she is Chancellor Cole, who's the main villain / Malladus, the main villain of Spirit Tracks. Has her spear basically removed from her body, but she is your companion throughout the game, and she's super helpful. She can turn into the phantoms and help you in the Phantom Tower. So she's very, she's a great companion throughout the game, and you are actively getting to play as her. It's one of basically the only time outside of the CDI games, which are not on here, that you actually get to play as her. And that whole part, she's very active in the story. Key elements of, completing the game, fighting the final boss. It's, I think she's a great Zelda character, and I wish that they would have Zelda be your companion more in games, because I love how they did that in Spirit Tracks, and maybe that's possible in Breath of the Wild too, based on the trailers that we're seeing. That could be something that does end up happening. Let's see. The Four Swords Zeldas, both of them, I don't remember much about what they do. Let me just get a quick refresh here. So let's see. In the beginning, Zelda goes to the sanctuary with her childhood friend. They check out the seal containing the wind mage Vati. The seal has weakened, however, Vati emerges, kidnaps Zelda in order to make her his bride. The four links eventually save her. So Four Swords. This one, they didn't have original artwork for Four Swords Adventures for Zelda, but I'd probably put her on the low end. Literally, she's like the Princess Peach in this game. She does nothing but get kidnapped and have to be saved at the end. So not the most interesting. Let's go to Four Swords Adventures. Let's see. Worried about the seal of Vati, so she does the same thing. She goes with the 6 other mythical maidens to check on the sanctuary. Link accompanies her. Something goes horribly wrong, however, the dark shadowy Link attacks them. Link is forced to draw the Four Sword. Vati escapes. The girls are abducted and Link comes to the rescue. Zelda helps them defeat Shadow Link, and Vati is dispatched. They quickly flee to the Tower of the Winds. Finally, Link faces Ganon, who is behind the catastrophe, and Zelda helps them deliver the final blow. So this Zelda is definitely doing a lot more, so I would throw her as a C. I just had to get a refresh, because Four Swords Adventures might be the only Zelda game that in Triforce Heroes. I don't think Zelda's in that game. I'm like, did I miss her? Did I forget to put her in that? Anyway, she's a little more active than regular Four Swords, so I think that's fine at a C. What I was going to say is I haven't completed Four Swords Adventures, so I will eventually, but definitely want to get a refresh there. Okay, now we can do, let's do A Link to the Past Zelda. So A Link to the Past Zelda, just to get a little bit of a refresh, she is kidnapped at the beginning of A Link to the Past, and she does call for Link's uncle, and Link telepathically messaging for help as Aghanim has kidnapped her. She's inside Hyrule Castle. She is one of the 7 maidens or sages who are one of the 7 maidens that needs to be rescued through your journey. But yeah, she's there at the beginning. She stays mostly in the sanctuary throughout the game. So not the most interesting. I would say she's slightly above the other 2 Zeldas. So I think she's solid at a B tier. Then we have Skyward Sword Zelda. I actually would say Skyward Sword Zelda is also in the S tier. Like I said, we're not really talking about design, because design-wise, I don't think she's my favorite by any means, but from a story perspective, I do really like Skyward Sword Zelda. Skyward Sword does have one of the strongest stories in Zelda, and she's very active throughout the game. I feel like I keep saying that phrase over and over again, so I'll try and not repeat myself. But she is with Impa kind of doing her journey, and Link is basically always a step behind her as Zelda's trying to complete her journey and her quest. And she does basically have to like freeze, she has to like go back in time and like freeze herself in time, and then you meet her again in the future. I forget how all the time travel works, but I know she ends up having to like seal herself in the in that sealed temple. I think it's called, behind the door or whatever. But anyway, she is very important to the story is what I'm trying to say. And the relationship with her and Link is actually one of the best developed like friendships that they have done. And it probably is the best in terms of the Link-Zelda relationship told through the game. And that's why she definitely deserves to be S tier. Tetra. So Tetra from Wind Waker and Phantom Hourglass, I think she has to get a high A. And that is, she's a fun character, although in Phantom Hourglass, she's pretty much just not really in the game that much, unfortunately. But she is a fantastic character. Again, she does help establish New Hyrule with Link. So that is a major accomplishment in sort of the things she does throughout the lore of Legend of Zelda. And the thing that kind of holds her back from an S is a common complaint with Wind Waker is that once Tetra finds out she's Princess Zelda, she doesn't really do much until like the very end of the game. She's kind of just takes a back seat. And I felt like they could have done a lot more with her. So that's the only reason she's an A and not an S tier. She is one of my favorite Zeldas, but that is definitely a part where it's like you were expecting a little bit more to happen because she was so fun and active throughout the beginning of the game. That's the thing that kind of holds her back. But still great enough that I would put her definitely above the Ocarina Zelda, who, again, Ocarina Zelda is also in 2 games, but she basically does nothing in Majora's Mask aside from like a 2-second cutscene. All right, let us go to which I think this is Minish Cap Zelda. So Minish Cap Zelda, I would probably say is probably a C, maybe a little bit higher through a little bit higher than these other 2 Zeldas. She is there with you at the beginning of the game. If I'm not mistaken, you're friends with her. Let me see if I can find a little bit on the Minish Cap Zelda. Because I know at the beginning, I think she gives you a tour of like Castle Town before things go crazy. Yeah, let's see. She takes Link, whom she's childhood friends with since they were infants, to the Pokori Festival. During the ceremony, she's turned to stone. And then Vati is evil magic searching for the legendary Light Force. Yeah, so there is a little bit going on at the beginning of the game and a little bit at the end of the game, but because she's basically turned to stone, much like Tetra in Phantom Hourglass, it always happens. They keep turning Zelda to stone. It's getting a little ridiculous. But there's enough there that I think she deserves to be C tier at the very least. The Oracle's Zelda, I believe this is Oracle Zelda, yeah. I would say Oracle Zelda I'd probably put her at a B. She only shows up in the linked game when you get to, so whichever one you play second, Zelda will show up and becomes active in the story. And I know a lot of people will be like, oh, this is the same as Link to the Past Zelda. I don't know. It seems like as far as the latest Hyrule Encyclopedia, if we go by like the Japanese translation, not to get into the weeds. Anyway, I think it's a separate Zelda. She's, like I said, she shows up in the second in like the second game, whichever you play. If you play seasons, then she's first, then she's in ages, and vice versa. And she's trying to help you on your mission, and then she becomes like, they try to sacrifice her twin Rovadu, but fail, and then they sacrifice themselves, and that's where we get the Ganon at the end. Maybe she should be a C, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Not super interesting, and she does only show up in, minimally in the second half of the game. So I actually, now that I'm thinking about it more, would probably bump her down to a C. Twilight Princess. Let's talk about Twilight Princess. So Zelda is the young matriarch of Hyrule until its invasion by Zant, the Twilight King, to whom she surrendered in order to prevent the death of her people. Subsequently, she is imprisoned in a tower in Hyrule Castle. I am reading here just to refresh. Unlike her people, she does not become a spirit under the influence of the Twilight, possibly due to her implied possession of the Triforce of Wisdom. It's here she meets Link, transformed into a wolf by the Twilight's power, and their conversation is short due to the arrival of her guards. So Twilight Princess Zelda, she does at some point sacrifice her spirit to basically save Midna, and then she was going to become queen. It says, according to the official Twilight Princess trading card deck, she was going to become queen of Hyrule. Zant's invasion came a few days before her scheduled coronation, thus preventing it from taking place. But basically, she does like sacrifice her like spirit to save Midna, so that's a cool thing. And then she does grant, light arrows to assist Link in the final battle. I'm not sure how she comes back. So she regains her body later on only to become possessed by Ganondorf. That's one little quirk about her character. It's like she loses her physical form in order to save a dying Midna, and then she just randomly regains her body. Kind of a plot hole with her, but she is definitely one of the more interesting Zeldas. So I'd definitely put her in an A. I don't think she doesn't have as much going on as like Ocarina or Tetra, so she's probably on the lower end of A tier, but nevertheless, the way she's forced to surrender to save her people, and then she sacrifices herself and then just randomly comes back. I don't know, it's a little weird, but still, it's cool if you just kind of shut your brain off for that little plot hole. Anyway, let us go to A Link Between Worlds Zelda. A Link Between Worlds Zelda. Let's see. So Zelda is the princess of Hyrule in Link's dream. He sees Princess... it's in Link's dream, he sees Princess Zelda being snatched away by the pig-shaped creature. Later, Zelda meets up with Link, and she is shocked to hear the news of the latest event. She fears that the evil of the past has reawakened and sends Link to go to Kakariko Village to see Sahasrara. Before he leaves, she gives him a special charm. Yuga later on turns Zelda into a portrait and takes her to Lorule. He then uses her portrait and those are the 7 sages to revive Ganon. After Link rescues all the sages, Zelda grants Link the light arrows needed to defeat Yuga, now fused with Ganon. Just a refresh there. I would probably also put her about on the same level, maybe a little bit, probably a little bit below A Link to the Past Zelda. Again, she is there a little bit at the beginning, but then, middle of the game, no Zelda seems to be a common trend. End of the game, she at least gives you the light arrows, somewhat active. Finally, we get to Breath of the Wild Zelda, and in my opinion, I would say that this is probably the best Zelda we've ever had, and probably my favorite Zelda, because Breath of the Wild story, it's almost more Zelda's story than Link's story. If anything, it's more about her gaining the confidence to use her powers, for she knows Ganon will return and she needs to be ready, and it's her journey. And Age of Calamity, I know, is like a different timeline, but that does give some insight into some of the missing chunks that would have happened in either timeline. So you get more, it fleshes out her story even more. even though that's technically like alternate universe or whatever. But still, even what's told in Breath of the Wild alone, and I'm sure we'll get even more in Breath of the Wild too, I really do think it's the most interesting Zelda as a character. Link may not be that interesting in Breath of the Wild, but I actually really like Zelda in Breath of the Wild, and I think she deserves the top spot. So this is what I think in terms of every Zelda character. Make sure to let me know what you guys think in the comments, and make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and also check out some of the other content that I do have on this channel, and I'll see you guys next time.